Hello and welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host Ryan, and today I'm joined by my lovely duo of co-hosts, Wyatt.
I'm wearing my douchey hat today because I couldn't find my dad hat that makes me look 2% less douchey.
And Alex.
For our watchers out here, big water.
Perfect. I love, Wyatt, that you've said that, because the shirt you're wearing doesn't look like camo up close, but in the distance, in the small frame of the camera, it almost looks like you're wearing a camo jacket, and it really completes the look.
Well, it's really great because there's a bright red shirt underneath it, which completely defeats the purpose of wearing camo to begin with. So I'm out here wearing heresy today, is what's going on.
Yep. All right. Let's jump to it. We have an Xbox Partner Showcase to talk about. This was a relatively small stream, but I think we were probably all surprised by how much stuff they showed off at this thing, considering that it was announced a couple days beforehand. So I'm just going to run through some of the stuff that we saw there, not in any crazy detail, I think, because there's a lot of other stuff that's going on, and we have other things we want to talk about today. But Unknown 9, Awakening. This was a weird one in that I think we've heard about this before. I don't remember when. But this is, I think, the first
gameplay. It is an
announcement
trailer. At least what I'm looking at here is
the studio. Let me actually confirm this. I have the power of the internet. Yeah, we've heard about Reflector before, but not that I think what they're actually working on. So yeah, this looked interesting. I'm curious to see what's going on here. Apparently they're making... Wow, alright, I just loaded up their website, and this is interesting. So Unknown 9 Awakening is the video game, but they're also making a podcast, Unknown 9 Out of Sight, as well as a comic, Unknown 9 Torment, and Unknown 9 Genesis, which is a novel.
So what you're saying is they're going all in on Unknown 9.
They're going all in on this universe, which is... oddly reminds me of Infinity Blade. Maybe it's just because Infinity Blade also had the thing, because they pulled in Brandon Sanderson, a very well-known writer, to do story stuff for Infinity Blade 2, and he wrote a novella, kind of covering the first game and like leading into the third and whatnot, and leading after, all that stuff. And it was really legitimately good for being a novel about Infinity Blade. Weirdly good, and Infinity Blade also has like a simple but pretty compelling story. So I don't know, I'm always behind these weird multimedia projects, but I think they generally don't turn out well. Although in this case, I think it's less of it's not a Silent Hill Awakening situation, which is funny.
I was gonna say the previous experiences with that have been, what they've shown of Silent Hill Awakening, and then the Quantum Leap stuff.
Yeah, Quantum Leap stuff. There is one other that I know about. I'm sure there's more that we don't know about. Callisto Protocol did a podcast leading up to its release that is actually, I would say, better than the game. The podcast is really interesting. It's like a voice-casted podcast about some of the lead up to the games, and it's super interesting. It's legitimately pretty good.
These kind of podcasts, when you say podcast, do you mean like developers talking about the game, or
no? It's
it's almost like a radio
storytelling radio show, basically.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think SkillUp actually did a full video on it. It may not be SkillUp, but there's a couple of video breakdowns of that podcast going around because it was super interesting in the lead up, and very high quality. So I would be excited to see if that is good. Specifically the podcast and stuff. I think this gameplay they showed off looks very interesting and probably pretty fun from what they showed off here, but not a ton.
I'm always down, for some reason, like alt history World War II aesthetic always tickles me in just the right way, and I can never explain to you why. I just think it looks cool, and it's always an aesthetic that I'm down for. This I genuinely really enjoyed everything that I saw here. It looked really. At first, I thought it was like, I thought it was Assassin's Creed DLC or something.
I legitimately for a second, because I think they showed like a shot of moving through tall grass, and I was like, "Oh, is this Assassin's Creed?" And I don't know why I thought that.
Jumping from one high building to another, and it was like, "Oh, that feels very like Assassin's Creed."
That's not just an Assassin's Creed thing. It's like Ghost of Tsushima plays the exact same way in tons of other games, but yeah, I know what you mean. I think it was because I saw the protagonist as sort of a Eastern, I think East Indian inspired look, So I was like, oh, is this like the India Assassin's Creed that we thought they were making ages ago? And no, it's not. It looks fun, but not that. So yeah, I'm excited for that to pop out sometime. I don't think we have, summer 2024. So we do have a release date for it. Not release date, but release window. Yeah, it looked interesting. I'm very interested about the next thing we saw, which is Sleight of Hand.
Yeah.
This is super curious to me because it's all this like stealth moment, but it has the protagonist is using like cards that have abilities basically, or like some luck based thing to them. Because they're playing up the idea of like Lady Luck being a thing here. I think it's interesting. This looks cool, but I don't think we got any actual gameplay. So
yeah, it seems like it would be maybe like a stealth or stealth action mixed with like card building or something, like or like deck mechanics, which could be kind of interesting. I don't know if they've said what kind of game they're making, but that's kind of what the vibe I was getting from the trailer, and I was like, that could actually be really interesting, like a stealth game where you have to, kind of execute your maneuvers properly, but there's this added sense of randomization to your.
Oh, there is some detail here. Third person stealth game.
Okay, so I was right.
Yeah, it is an actual third person stealth game. I was wondering if it would end up being like a tactical game, like with the cards aesthetic, be something a little bit more like Shadow Gambit or the other. I think Me is the studio that did those and is no longer around, shut down after the latest game. But yeah, I'm very curious. I love stealth games, so I'm excited to see what they make. All right. Yeah. Moving on. Next, we had, this is another really interesting one. The Altars.
Oh, right.
Which seems like a sci-fi game about being stranded on a planet where some element of that planet allows you to pull yourself, but as if you had made different decisions at like critical points in life to help you. So you're like living with your clones essentially that all made different choices in life, which is an interesting concept.
Neat.
That concept, like when I understood that concept, I was like, oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm super curious to see what this is going to be in the long term. Because it looks like it's a third-person exploration game that you then like go back to a little base building segment almost in your big wheel. So
it was interesting. They went into a lot of depth on your giant wheel home thing, but they didn't really talk about what you do outside of it. So I'm wondering what that half of the gameplay is going to look like.
I wonder if we'll get another trailer at some point focusing on that.
I would be excited if that turned into sort of like it does seem to be more like a puzzle game aesthetic, but sort of like a everything everywhere all of once gamified.
Yeah, like I'm so curious what this looks like, because I get what you mean, Alex. The concept is kind of similar to that.
Well, this is made from the people who did this War of Mine, which was kind of like
great game, like
great game,
phenomenal thing. So I'm sure this will be really interesting when it comes out.
And they're very much about making difficult, seemingly impossible lose choices for the player. That was kind of their claim to fame in a lot of ways.
Right. Moving past the Altars, I'm excited to see that again at some point, hopefully, because no year announcement for that, just said coming to on the page. So not sure if that's going to be this year or next year or year after. After that, we saw Creatures of Ava, which is sort of a monster taming game, it looks like, but not in the style of Pokemon. It looks more friendly and musical in a way. So I'm excited to see what this is too, because I love these types of cozy
fun art style.
Yeah, cozy, just creative fun games that don't seem to have much going on in like combat. There was another game that I played a long time ago that kind of fit into this, called the Yonder the Cloudcatcher Chronicles, which is a like adventure game with no combat. That's just about you exploring and doing fun stuff in the world.
Oh, you can give the creatures belly rubs. Wonderful.
Of course you can.
Of course. It does seem like not combat, but it does seem like there's combat-esque sequence.
Yeah,
where
there's you controlling your creatures with a little staff thing.
Well, there's that, and there's also, it seems like you're like detoxifying the creatures or something, and then you have them follow you. So I wonder how it's probably not going to be a very intense kind of system, but seems interesting.
All right. That's also slated for this year.
Very fun looking.
Then we got the weird thing. And this is a thing I want to mention because I don't know what my reaction to this should be. We saw Roblox and Chucky.
Oh, yeah. Roblox has really just turned into something entirely different, hasn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't look like the Roblox aesthetic that I used to know.
This very much feels like they're trying to do like a Fortnite crossover trailer. That's kind of what this was reminding me of. But it's Roblox, so it just doesn't work. It was very strange.
It's funny because Roblox was like, I don't want to say it was a proto Fortnite, but proto Fortnite's like new creator thing that allows you to create very custom modes. Roblox had that, was like inspired by that. Of course, there's tons of other crazy issues with Roblox. Like there's a bunch of stuff going on about them not paying the children making the games that are on their platform and sketchy things like that. So there's some weird stuff going on, but
it's certainly a decision, the soundtrack for that trailer.
Yeah. This sort of ends up looking like Discount Dead by Daylight, or
I'm sure
player.
I'm sure that there's plenty of people out here that's out there that is looking forward to something like this. I don't want to discount that at all. I just don't. It feels very out of place in the showcase that it's in compared to everything else we've seen, everything else we saw. It just was very strange.
Yeah, I just don't know what to think about it. I'm not the person to ask. I'm sure there are people who will enjoy this. I don't know if they were watching this preview. I think is my takeaway. I don't think people were expecting a Roblox reveal at the Xbox Partner Showcase.
No.
All right, after that, something I'm actually very excited for, because Frogware's games are really unique, and they're one of the only studios doing these like modern detective style games. Sinking City 2. So the Lovecraft inspired Eldritch Sinking City game is getting a sequel, which is impressive after the kerfuffle that went down with the first Sinking City.
Right.
Which is basically, it was stolen from them by the publisher and then published in a terrible thing, and then Frogwares has now managed to buy the rights back and become the sole publisher of the game, so they're self-publishing the first Sinking City, and now if you buy the Sinking City anywhere, you are directly supporting Frogwares. Whereas before, It was like, there was a period of time where if you bought it on platforms, you would get a broken version of the game that was like ripped off of a torrent or something, and it was just the publisher putting it out instead of Frogwares.
Or perhaps any younger viewers or listeners that are listening to this, think about a better, what might help kind of put this into perspective. Taylor Swift and what she's been doing with her albums, which is re-releasing them under her own label, so she actually
that's a really good
earns the revenue from those albums, which is essentially what's going on here.
Yeah. Right. That's Sinking City, and they're also the makers of the Sherlock Holmes games, at least some of the recent ones.
That seemed familiar.
Yeah. The newer Sherlock Holmes games are very good, so I'm excited to see that. And apparently, Sinking City 2 is running on Kickstarter. So there's a Kickstarter campaign to support the game. It's not actually launched yet, it looks like. But I'll be looking out for that when that comes. All right. After Sinking City 2, we get I think the only person in this that even remotely cares about this is me, and I also think even I don't care about it because I don't own a console to play Final Fantasy, or that I would play Final Fantasy 14 on. I would rather just play it on PC. But I'm very excited it's coming to Xbox. Absolutely, yeah.
Always a good thing.
Hey, I'm hoping I can rope my dad into play.
I'm assuming
I would love to raid with your dad.
It'd be great. I don't know if he would ever get to raid content, but he's competitive, so maybe. Yeah, I love 14. I'm excited it's coming to more people.
I'm going to be honest with you. I saw that they were releasing it for Xbox. I was like, cool. Skip.
Yeah, 14's full crossplay, so I would not expect that isn't the case. I don't think they've explicitly said it, but I imagine that is true. As a note, though, this is an open beta, so there isn't not considered the full release because they're probably still working out whatever issues pop up with Xbox servers as they are porting to that. All right. Next one is an exciting one. Stalker, a full collection of the original Stalker games, is out on consoles. Notably, I believe this includes PlayStation. Let me make sure my information is correct there, but I believe there is at least a page on the PlayStation Store for it.
Because for the trailer that they have, it only says Xbox.
Yeah, it's on PlayStation. So it's both, which is great to see. Yeah, I love that, and I love seeing these Stalker games more available. They're games that I own and have yet to play, but I've heard so many good things about them that I need to play them at some point.
I've had more than a few people tell me that I'd really like. I think it was Call of Pripyat specifically. Is one that I would enjoy. I don't know why that one specifically, but that's the one that people keep
I think that's the first one. So I think it's people just recommending you play them in order.
Yeah, okay. That sounds about right.
Actually, no, I think Shadow of Chernobyl is the first one. So I guess Call of Pripyat might be the newer one. But yeah, I have been meaning to play through those at some point in the lead up to Stalker 2, which has had some dev issues, notably because of Ukraine and Russia invading Ukraine in a terrible situation, because the devs are Ukrainian. So they've managed to reconvene in somewhere else, I think, and have their studio back up and running. So Stalker 2's
nice.
actually running now, but man, like what a situation to be put in. So yeah, I'm glad these games are available to play for more people, because I don't believe they were on console before. I think they were just PC.
It's just a PC. Yeah, it was just a PC series before.
All right. Next. I don't know how to react to this game. I hope this is excellent. I want this to be the best game I played this year, which is Monster Jam Showdown. I am so curious because the wording of the like website page for this makes it sound like this is based on real monster trucks. I don't think this is just a video game thing. I think this is paired to some like Monster Truck Sports League, which is amazing. I'm so happy that this is happening.
This feels like another Hot Wheels game almost.
Which is wild because those Hot Wheels games are excellent. They're really good.
See, when I saw the title, I was like, oh god, is this like a Monster Energy thing? It's not, to be clear, but
to be
I
fair,
saw Monster and
Monster Energy Supercross is a great racing game. And I'm not joking. It's from the makers of the old MX versus ATV series.
But is it a better Monster Energy game than Death Stranding?
That Shark Truck just did a backflip.
That's Rockstar Energy, Wyatt.
What are you talking about? No, it was Monster in Death Stranding.
I think Death Stranding's Rockstar, isn't it?
No, it's Monster.
Is it
How
Monster?
Dare you?
Am I misremembering horribly?
I think it is Monster. Yeah.
Ugh, I've been shamed in front of. Yeah, it was Monster Energy. I've been shamed.
How
in front
dare
of
you?
Podcast
How
crew.
Dare you?
Well, you never watched Norman Regis crush a Monster Energy?
The thing is, I have watched
punch
it.
the camera for watching his crotch too much.
You played Death Stranding for a significant amount of hours.
Well, okay, most of my playtime's on PC, in which it is not Monster Energy. It's the Death Stranding Clean Juice or whatever it is, because they didn't have the sponsor deal for PC.
It's Beast Juice.
I only played
Beast
a little
power.
bit of the PS4 version way back when, which had Monster Energy. So, I'm sorry, I got it wrong, and that's a horrific mistake. After that is the Persona 3 DLC. This is, I believe, a new thing. The Aegis-related thing I don't think was in the original. This is, from most people, I think, the idea here is they're going to lead into a DLC called The Answer, which, for those not in the know, is a thing that came out for the original Persona 3, is not in the re-release by base, and provides a new ending to the game. And it's a little wild. And the rumor right now is that they're not going to change anything about The Answer, which means we're going to have another, 6 years of people discussing what The Answer means, and I can't wait. Because of course a DLC called The Answer does not leave you with an answer.
Of course not. That makes too much sense.
I'm being very subtle, so I don't want to spoil anything. They do just confirm here that the answer's coming in September. So I'm very curious what the new player's reaction to that is going to be. All right, so after some of our final announcements, we got more of gameplay of the first Berserker Kazan.
Yes, I'm very
Alex,
excited
you have
to
this
dive.
in your fantasy league, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm very excited to dive into the DNF verse because
this is such a bizarre game.
Fighting game as well.
It looks good, right? Like this is a game that looks. For some reason, when I saw the first trailer for this, I mean, the first trailer looked fantastic. I did not think it was this far along to get like a full gameplay trailer very soon after that reveal. But yeah, this is looking really solid.
I was going to say, speaking of the gameplay, there is, watching the trailer again, there is so many shots of him opening doors. It honestly got to a comedic amount. I think there's 3 or 4 times when it just shows him.
I think it's the Dark Souls animation too, of like walking forward as you're pushing the door in.
Yeah,
that's what makes
a good few like almost incredibly Dark Soulsy aspects to it. There's that the levers for operating elevators look almost exactly like the same models that they are for Elden Ring. But with a little bit of a color difference. They have the same sort of like gear thing going on with like the big boy and the little one where it's interesting.
I mean, as we all know, Souls-likes are the thing that they're obviously known for is opening doors. That's the only thing
you say that, but that's true. You say it like a joke, but it's real. That is an important thing of every Souls.
But even if
doors slowly,
every mechanic is different. If something feels like it has the same animation set, it will be called a Souls-like.
Very similarly to how if you have a God of War game, the only way it can be a true God of War game is if you get in the canoe the exact same way. Otherwise, it's not the same game. It's not the same series.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I think we're all pretty happy with First Berserker, unless anyone felt that didn't show well. I think it was pretty impressive.
I mean, I think it showed well. I think it doesn't. I can't.
Not your game.
I'm not my game, but it presents really, really well, and it does look very good for sure.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Tales of Kinzaria Zhao, and I think this looks great at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prince of Persia, which is I think the most comparable and just the only other like Metroidvania side scroller that we've gotten recently. That's like big publisher thing. Was really good. So I'm really hoping that Tales of Kinzaria is also really good, and it looks like it will be.
It's a tough act to follow in that.
This is the
Prince of Persia was fantastic.
This is the one that's related with the Critical Role, or in some
Critical
way.
Role Foundation provided some funding.
Foundation.
So.
It also has something to do with the creative group. I don't
probably the same situation.
To an extent. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think this looks really good. They showed a lot of different abilities and like weapons and whatnot, which I think is the one thing that Prince of Persia was sort of missing to me. Is it feels like your gameplay doesn't change that much over the course of it, almost more like a Hollow Knight style where you're using the same thing for most of the game.
Yeah.
Whereas this looked like it had a little bit more of a traditional set of Metroidvania abilities. But I hope it's really good. I think it is showing really well, and I'm excited to play it when it comes out relatively soon, I think. So excited to see when that lands. April 23rd. It's coming quickly. All right. Our last thing, I believe. Oh, no, we had two things. Second to last. Frostpunk 2. So Frostpunk was a really, really successful breakout strategy city builder hit a few years back, and this is the second game, the follow-up. I've never played the original Frostpunk. It's been on my backlog of shame for a while, and I'll probably just take it off and play Frostpunk 2 now instead. But
I've heard nothing but good things about the original.
Yeah, everyone I've heard that played it loved it. So I imagine that will be the same situation for Frostpunk 2, unless something really bad happens. And that's coming in July. After that is, I think, the most me game that was shown in this, which is bizarre to say in a showcase that also included a monster truck racing game. Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, which is the thing Capcom showed like 10 seconds of, and then a bunch of random colors. A few showcases
the really
ago.
trippy looking one, yeah.
Yes. And they showed a little bit of this originally in their Capcom showcase back around like fake E3 season, Summer Games, Game Fest. And here we have a more full breakdown of it. And yeah, I think this looks super interesting and really good to look at.
The game that looks like if someone put Spirited Away in a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way of describing it. This is a type of game that I think it gives me, and I mean this in a positive way, it gives me PS2 energy. And I think that's very good. I think that's very, very good, because I think the fact that I can't kind of tell immediately how this is going to play, I think is a good thing. So I'm excited to see what this officially plays as when it comes out, I believe later this year. And I think there's very little I can describe it right now. There's almost like tower defense elements, it looks like, where you're putting your people in towers and whatnot. But yeah, I want to play this. I'm very curious. I want to know more information about this. If this is like an open thing, if it's level based, like what's going on in this.
I really want to know what their inspirations were for this art style. Like what kind of sources were they drawing from? Because it's so like you can't quite place it. Some of the plants almost seem very like aquatic to me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I want to know what their like inspirations were.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the name of it, but there's a PS2 game that reminds me a lot of Kunitsugami's art style. It's a relatively unknown. In fact, it might have only been Asian release. PS2 game that has this like demon summoning thing that looks similar to how Kunitsugami looks. And I believe Capcom published it, or was somehow related to it. But yeah,
you know what this almost looks like to me? This almost looks like a Dynasty Warriors game to me. I could see this being
okay, Wyatt.
Maybe. Okay. Yes. No.
I guess I get it. Like the pulled back camera.
The pulled back camera. There's like a bunch of like AI, like friendlies, allied units and stuff. I don't know.
You know what? Maybe with the base defense and stuff, I could see it playing out a little bit like Warriors style. Although I don't think it'll be nearly as purely action based.
I don't think it'll be like straight up a Warriors game, but I think it might maybe borrow a lot of kind of structural elements from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, that was the Xbox Partner Showcase. I think overall pretty positive feelings about the entire showcase.
Yeah.
I don't think anything showed poorly. Even the Chucky thing, like, I don't personally care, but it looked fine. I have no attachment to it, so I don't want to judge it.
It's just out of place with everything else that they were showing.
Yeah, the fact that it's like an existing game crossover felt weird in a partner showcase where most of it was relatively big indie and other up to AAA with Capcom titles that are coming out. So yeah, felt slightly misplaced. I'm excited about basically everything that was shown. I don't know that I'll go out of my way to play Monster Jam.
I'm wishing you all the luck in the world.
I hope it's great, because man, I would love a return of like the old school MX versus ATV style games in full force. Give me the crazy motocross racing games. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on to what we've been playing recently, and more particularly, I want to talk about what's coming up in terms of games, because March has already been a pretty crazy month, or not March, February through March. Like the first 3 months of this year have been pretty crazy. And in 2 weeks, we have a bunch of stuff launching that's going to make it even crazier.
Yeah,
because
this is a stacked month.
My poor wallet.
Let's just go through the March 22nd releases, because they're all on the same day, and all three of them are big. So there's, first of all, I'll say the one that I think most of us are not going to play, which is Princess Peach's Showtime. And I want to be very clear that this is not because I think the game like doesn't look good. In fact, I think that game looks incredibly fun. But it's going up against Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
And Rise of the Ronin.
And also,
And
I mean,
Rise of the Ronin.
to be even more fair, we can just make Princess Peach and Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, we could just make Princess Peach and Dragon's Dogma. I mean, the character creator is good enough. That's her new adventure. She's going to Showtime in Dragon's Dogma. So yeah, Rise of the Ronin, Dragon's Dogma 2, and Princess Peach Showtime are all launching on the same day.
That's nuts.
And
that's insanity.
Wow, that's going to be quite the competition.
Because I think all three of these are not games that immediately shout like, "Oh, this is a huge deal" individually. But people have gotten like more and more excited, I feel like, for Dragon's Dogma 2 as the lead up to launch is happening. I think it's been picking up traction in like mainstream games people and not just Capcom fans and like fans of the older game. So that's been picking up the Steam train, and I think Rise of the Ronin, not quite to that degree, had a similar reaction in the last showcase it did of like showing the gameplay. People were like, "Oh, this looks really good." So,
do you guys think that we have the possibility of seeing any of the because there is it for not for all of them between like Rise of the Ronin and Dragon's Dogma, but I think there definitely is that sort of tonal clash that we could hopefully I'd like to see it. Hopefully, see more memes along the lines of Doom and Animal Crossing. That crossover. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it could be possible. I don't know if Rise of the Ronin will be included in that. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 and Princess Peach's Showtime, we might get some Doom and Animal Crossing themed fan art. I think Rise of the Ronin is probably the most.
The problem is that the contrast between those two games is not nearly as stark as Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing. And it was the same thing with Barbenheimer. Just two couldn't be more different in any context whatsoever. They're definitely different, but it's not like it's not enough.
They're all vaguely action games, right?
Yeah.
And even Dragon's Dogma, it's dark, but I don't think it won't revel in its absurdity.
It's not Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be that dark. Although they have said for Dragon's Dogma 2, if anyone dies, they're dead forever. I wonder what that's
yay.
But yeah, let's talk about these games, because I want to nail down a little bit on, first of all, do we think from our immediate like podcast group picking Rise of the Ronin over Dragon's Dogma 2 first? I don't think so, which is hard because against any other game I would be picking Rise of the Ronin, but it's Dragon's Dogma 2. We're in a tough situation, so I'm expecting to have some Dragon's Dogma 2 discussion.
I'm going to be playing both of them eventually, I really hope.
Yeah, like that's exactly where I'm at. Of like, I want to play both for sure, but it's going to be a while.
Both at the same time, I feel like would be a tall order.
I can
works.
Yeah. But I am really excited to see Rise of the Ronin coming, because I do think that era of Japan, of like this slightly imperialist U.S. or not U.S. but Britain coming to Japan and like starting trade and everything, and the region becoming more almost European in its architecture is super interesting. It's set in Yokohama, which is also the setting of the Like a Dragon games, so I'm very excited to see Yokohama, but not modern. When I get around to that game, first of all, it's going to be Dragon's Dogma time. So I know Alex and I have gotten a chance to play around with the character creator earlier today. I don't know if you have yet, Wyatt. But
I haven't, because for a game that we'll talk about when we talk about what we've been playing, it's been taking over my life, as it does once or twice a year. But we'll get there.
Yeah, great character creator. I'm excited to play Dragon's Dogma when it comes out, because Dragon's Dogma 2, because I think especially from talking with you, Wyatt, Dragon's Dogma 1 is a game that had flashes of brilliance, but was also really obviously came in like super hot. Didn't have enough budget. They were going for too many things and had to cut most of the game initially. And I think the number's been thrown out is like initially Dragon's Dogma was planned to be like 80% more game than what we actually got.
Oh my god!
It's kind of cut. It's the perfect game for a sequel, because there's so many things that it could be that could just be expanded upon, added, or ironed out in a sequel.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that excites me the most about it, because like I have played Dragon's Dogma 1 and I do like it. I don't I kind of drop it and pick it up here and there because it doesn't hold my interest for the longest amount of time. But I think it's a great concept that has been like begging for a sequel to kind of fully realize its ideas. And I think that's the main reason, like I said, that I'm excited about it more so than anything else.
I just want to grab onto a monster that I'm fighting again. I love grappling.
That's the other thing, is like they have a great combat system in Dragon's Dogma 1.
Yeah, they have so many unique things that you can do in it as well.
I am genuinely shocked that, like, how long has it been since the first game? It's been over
2011.
Yeah, it's been over 10 years.
Over 10 years. And to my knowledge and my current memory, I can't really think of another fully open world RPG that has attempted to do boss fights quite like Dragon's Dogma. It's insanely impressive, even 10 plus years later, going back to play it a few months ago. It's so impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge part of the reason why I think a lot of people are getting excited for Dragon's Dogma 2 is just how crazy that combat system is, and not even like crazy in a complex way, but just the things you can do are super fun, and there's tons of different types of fun gameplay there, where like casters, you can typically sit in one space and hold a button, so they're a lot easier to play. But the feeling of unleashing a literal tornado, and not like, oh, a shitty video game tornado. No, this is a real tornado that is huge and sweeps everything off their feet and flings them across the battlefield, is so cool. High Bolide might be my favorite spell in video games, which is the spell that as you charge it up, it shoots out from the ground like gigantic ice like spears basically rise up and strike whatever you're hitting, and it looks so cool. And they've shown in this game that spell now creates terrain that you can like climb up and then jump off of when you use it.
Ryan, you're making it so hard for me to want to be a warrior character again. I just want to do sword and board
Dogma,
first.
Alex, is you can freely swap your vocation, so you aren't limited to one. You can play both of them, and this is one of the really beneficial things that 2 is doing that 1 did not do. Just in Dragon's Dogma 1, as you level up, you sort of have the Fire Emblem stat growth thing, where different classes or different vocations have different stat growths, but whatever you level up as, that stat growth is permanent. So like if you're playing a sorcerer, you'll get the highest magic raise, which meant when you played the game, you would level as a class that is not the class you wanted to play because you wanted the optimal stats for the class that you were playing. And it was never a point where like you had to do that. The game was not hard enough that was a thing that you had to do, but people got kind of in that mindset of wanting to optimize it. And so they would level up like assassin or sorcerer to play something else better when they didn't want to play that, which is not super fun. So Dragon's Dogma 2, those stat bonuses...
sounds like the Oblivion method leveling.
Yes. Those stat bonuses now swap whenever you swap vocations in 2. So you still get the like level up stat bonuses, but now that you get ones that transfer to your new class whenever you change. And yeah, that's very exciting.
The other kind of interesting thing to put into perspective, I think, too, is the context in terms of Capcom has been on a roll for a couple of years now. I don't know what kind of wizardry is going on over there, but they're just producing banger.
Ever since like Devil May Cry 5, they've been putting out non-stop bangers. Even Exoprimal, which I think we all agree is a super weird game, was very fun. So I hesitate to call it I wouldn't call it a banger, but I wouldn't say it's a flop either.
And not to say that 2011 Capcom only made bad games, but the mid 2000s was a rough time for Capcom, because from what I remember, they were doing a lot of the dumb like on disc DLC garbage and just releasing a lot of sequels that were below expectation, that kind of thing. And I feel like they're in a much better place to execute a game on a scale like this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really Monster Hunter World kind of revitalized Capcom at the time, and so since then they've been doing these great like Resident Evil remasters, remakes, and just tons of random games that are really good, reviving Mega Man and stuff like that. That's all come out extremely well. So I'm excited to see them in the position they're currently in. And I hope Dragon's Dogma 2 is really good. There is some, I want to call it a kerfuffle, I think, floating around about Dragon's Dogma 2 right now, in that the first game, I believe, had, I want to say 9 vocations in a grid. And
so. That sounds right.
For some reason, Dragon's Dogma 2, they decided when they were showcasing the vocations for Dragon's Dogma 2, early on they showcased the Trickster, which is a very cool looking vocation that is focused around like illusion and tricking enemies into fighting each other and stuff. The confusing thing is that Trickster's icon, because in the first game, the way that they worked is you had your basic, your advanced, and then you had a hybrid class that was a combination of the advanced classes. So like Magic Archer was the combination of the Strider and Sorcerer, basically. So everyone was primed that when you see the split color icon, there's going to be basic versions of both colors of things. And then because they showed Trickster and its icon is purple and pink, 2 colors that aren't in any of the vocation tables, people went, there's going to be way more. And we're going to have like double the number of vocations, and it'll be like there'll be basics of all of these and whatnot. And
they
of course the game's
themselves
not out yet,
not saying anything.
So we don't know exactly how many are in there. I don't think it's been confirmed, but there has also been talk about pawn exclusive vocations, which is a new thing of like pawns being able to be vocations that they weren't, that the player can't be. And whether or not that's a mistranslation or not isn't entirely sure, because again, these are interviews translated from Japanese to English, which always have the issue of a lot of the time things just get translated slightly wrong. But so far it looks like Dragon's Dogma 2 is just going to have 10 vocations, which again, still a good number. I think you would be hard pressed to play more than 10 classes in the game. Especially considering Dragon's Dogma 2 has made adjustments to them that every class now has their own unique weapon, aside from one of them, which is the Warfare, which is sort of very special-looking class that we don't really have a breakdown over what their whole deal is, but Warfare can swap between 3 weapons at a time. So instead of getting the full kit of one class, you get partial kits of multiple, which is a cool idea. But the only real, I think, sad part of this is it means the only base game vocation I think we don't have some representation for, at least the weapon type, is Mystic Knight, which was another super fun like paladin-y vocation, and it looks like we may not get them, which is the only thing I'm a little bit sad about, because Mystic Knights were super fun, and I would love to get them back, though they have said that some of the fighter stuff will have magic and whatnot, compared to the first game where they only used weapon skills. So I'm hoping there's still enough variety there, and I hope people have not worked themselves into a tizzy over the Dragon's Dogma 2.
Oh, wait, know a good amount of people have tizzied.
Working themselves into a that doesn't
never happens. I will say their graphic design with the 2-color thing is super confusing, because if you are following the graphic design of the first game, that would mean there are basic classes of both colors. So I get why people are confused. I don't think it matters. So we'll see when it comes out if people throw their arms up in frustration at the lack of Mystic Knight. All right. I think that's the Dragon's Dogma 2 discussion. We talked a bit about the first game and what they could improve for this one. Largely just it being incomplete. Or at least not necessarily fully incomplete, but feeling incomplete and not having a great story and whatnot. So I'm hoping that's more ironed out this time around.
And hopefully the pawns will keep their goddamn mouths shut.
Oh, we already know that's not happening.
Not a chance.
I think you can adjust them, because the character creator does give you an option at the end. It's like, what do you want your pawn to act like? And there's a bunch of options for you to pick from, so I assume one of those would be less talkative. You'll have to see when you play the game. All right, so Wyatt, you said there was a game you wanted to talk about that you've been playing recently.
Yes. So me and this game, we go way back. Not really, but it's more like it creeps up on me once or twice a year, and then I get really into it, and then I drop it really hard, and then I wait another like half a year to a year, and then it crawls back into my life again. No Man's Sky. I have been back into the arms of a previous lover.
What a way to put it. Why?
I mean, this game still gets like 3 or 4 major content updates a year. It's actually unreal, and every single one of them has been free. So it's nice to check in every, half a year to a year because there's always new stuff going
Also, no,
on.
killer VR game. Fantastic in VR.
That's what I've heard, and it's free. It comes
Yeah,
with
it's with the
your
game.
purchase of the game, which is great. I it's been an interesting time going back to it now because I feel like we've been talking about survival games a lot recently. We've talked about Shrouded, we've talked about Pal World, we've talked about some of the things that kind of annoy us with that genre and how you can kind of streamline things. No Man's Sky has been doing that for a while, and it's something I haven't really realized. And it's I feel like it's the reason why I keep coming back to it, even though I'm not the biggest survival game player. Just small things like you do all of your crafting in menus, which has its own set of problems, but there's no crafting bench. There's not a lot of things that you have to put down and work with in order to like improve your character, which is really nice. Or there's just small little things like that. Like if you're mining a resource, you're getting amounts of the resource as you're mining it, so you don't have to fully mine something just to get all of the resources from it, which is really nice. Getting into a ship and flying off of a planet and going into space and going to another planet, it never gets old. It is always the coolest thing every single time. um,
Those are tons
I'm
of
doing.
fun vehicles now that are very cool. Like you
Oh,
can
the
now have your own like
exocraft is great.
exosuit to run around with that has guns
Yeah,
attached and everything.
and just the basic roamer feels really good to control.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a lot of fun to drive around. It's got its own host of upgrades as well. Recently, they've added Star Wars style trench runs when you're fighting freighters and dreadnoughts, which is really fun. There's community expeditions, which is more of like the progress. Your progression is kind of quickened a little bit, and you're trying to achieve a bunch of objectives, and you get permanent unlocks, which is nice.
Hmm.
They have like match made community missions and stuff, which gets you really unique rewards. Just all sorts of just it's crazy how much is in the game now. And I will say the problem with that is that the game still has some very, very aggravating structural problems that no matter how many new features they add on top of it is not going to fix. The best way to describe inventory management, and I forget who said this. It was someone who was it was watching I think it was a review or something. And the way he described the inventory management in this game is perfect. He described it as Russian nesting dolls, where there's menus inside of menus and you're dragging things all over the place, and it's really annoying, especially in the heat of combat. There are ways that they've kind of sped this process up a lot, but sometimes it's like you gotta take this thing, you gotta drag it over here, and then you gotta like hold X over here, and then drag that whole thing over here, and it gets very mixture of boring and frustrating, which is not a good combination to have. But goddamn, the game just still drags me in every single time I come back to it.
Yeah.
Until you reach the point of you spend so much time and you're like, what am I doing with my life? And then you move on to other things. But it's still great. It still plays great. It should still be winning the ongoing game every single year at the Game Awards, but they've just stopped doing it because we all know that it'll win anyways.
Hmm.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah. I also have been on a not No Man's Sky kick, but a space game and survival game kick. Up until the launch of Rebirth, because now I've just been playing Rebirth. But yeah, No Man's Sky still I think is the one that I come back to most often because I think even though it's not like a full survival game, I think it gets the balance of survival to monotony to actual like creative building and stuff right in a way that at least for what I like out of those games, most games don't hit, aside from like Valheim and whatnot.
And it nails the adventure part of it really well,
yes.
like the exploration. Even if you start running into the same materials on every planet, you still want to see what the planets look like, because every other update, they're still adding more and more variety to their procedural.
They have the town
system.
like settlement keeping thing in there that I've yet to really mess around with, but started out a little while ago.
Also,
that was super fun. So
yeah, it's really like again, like the variety of planets they have now is insane. There's entire planets that are just, it's like fully mechanical, so all of the like life forms that you run into are like, it's either like sentient metal or like robot creatures. It's quite fascinating. They've added like living ships, so you're flying around in like aliens essentially. There's like pets that you can tame and ride around on. They're constantly adding things to it, and I think they've the biggest change for this game is they struck a balance between kind of promoting you, kind of encouraging you to go explore, but having the survival elements not get in the way of that. I feel like that was one of the biggest issues with the game at launch, was that, oh, go explore all these planets, but also there's tons of crafting survival stuff that kind of keeps you in place. And I feel like they've struck a much better balance of go off and fly in a direction and go to other solar systems and stuff, but every now and then just hop on a planet and just mine some stuff and you'll be fine.
yeah, because the great thing is they have 3 difficulty options aside from like just normal and creative. They have the normal, like what the current balance is. They have an easier mode that's like less intense and you don't have to worry about as many things. And they have a harder mode if you really want the survival stuff, where it cranks up the amount of survival stuff you need to deal with, which is like, I love the split like that. That just makes it easier for players of different types to like it.
They also have what more games need to start doing, which is customizable difficulty. They have tons of sliders and values and stuff for
I'm really glad that it's caught on in the survival game world, because I would say most of them now have that. Of like, I went back and played some Conan Exiles too, and that also has its own customizable difficulty stuff now. Even Power World had that stuff. So yeah, I'm glad it's a trend that's caught on in the survival game world.
And I'm just gonna say this, every time we talk about this game, I have to mention the score. It's one of my favorite video game scores ever. If you haven't heard it before, just go listen to it. Even if you have no interest in playing the game whatsoever, just go listen to the score. It is absolutely just incredible, in my opinion.
All right, Alex, you've been playing anything you wanted to bring up about?
Ooh. There's been a few things.
You still on the Uncharted train?
Yeah, I've been taking a little bit of a break from it as I've sort of. I wish I was a lot better at building, than I am.
Time.
Yeah, yeah. There's that. I've been looking at a lot of other people's buildings for inspiration, and it sort of ends up psyching me out. Where I'm just like, oh, I don't know how to make that filigree for the sides. Or like I make like a little teensy miscalculation in my floor plan and it screws everything up.
Yep, I hate that.
But it's at least it's easy to sort of like take down your stuff and you just get your materials back with the undo button.
Easy to adjust.
What was the other stuff? Elden Ring's been an ongoing thing. I started a second character because I haven't been able to beat the Elden Beast on my first one.
I'm super curious because I don't think you've talked much about Elden Ring on the podcast, Alex.
Really?
What have you been? What's your thoughts now that you've made it to Elden Beast and like done most of the game?
Now that your Souls-like build,
how Souls Ring born like pilled are you now?
That's a good question. I think it's Elden Ring is definitely a different experience than I would say is still any of the other like actual mainline Dark Souls games. Because I have my Switch with me. Mainly I have other stuff on that, but I do have the Dark Souls remastered on there, and I went back to try it again after getting as close to finishing Elden Ring as is possible. And I still hate Dark Souls 1. tried to. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no, there he is. I thought you were frozen for a second.
I think
same here.
Something weird happened.
I'm
here.
Yeah, I tried to go back with Dark Souls 1. Tried to make a new character with the strength build that I've been, like not the same weapons, but tried to do a strength build that I was working on my current playthrough in Elden Ring for Dark Souls, and oh boy, it does not work.
Yeah. not having a good time with it.
No, you are molasses. I haven't played Dark Souls 2, but I've heard that it's even worse for that, for just like feeling of overall movement.
Yeah, 2's interesting. It functions very strangely.
Yeah,
Put it that way.
Yeah, I'm still a fan of Elden Ring. It's something that I can easily come back to, and I'm so happy it lets you wander around and do things, because if I would for my first sorcerer character, I was able to knock out the bosses in and around like near Limgrave and Caelid and Liurnia pretty easily. Limgrave and Liurnia for the strength character, not a problem at all. An absolute breeze. I tried to fight Radon, who is my favorite boss fight still in this game, just because of the spectacle and fighting the strongest of the demigods, and all his really fun stuff. And essentially, what the main mechanic for beating him boils down to the power of friendship. It's because you're allowed so many summons in the boss fight, and they're all of characters that you've met before.
Yeah, Radon's interesting because Radon was my first wall in Elden Ring that I ran into that like hard stopped me for a while. I think a big part of that is I just ran into him too early.
I engaged Radon at about the same time that I did with my strength character as I did for my sorcery character, an absolute wall again. And I kept on like going back to him after I defeated like more and more bosses, after I leveled up more and more. I think what was it? It was around like the mid or like early 60s, because that's the level recommendation for Caelid. And that's when I was able to beat him with my sorcerer. I've gone well into what's the capital? I've explored a majority of the Altus Plateau, done a bunch of the side dungeons there, gone through the main city. Only after that, and like finding the Dung Eater in the sewers, was I able to have enough levels to go back and fight Radon and finally beat him today.
Nice.
It's wild the amount of difference
he drifts
that
on
like
that horse and hits like a full circle around him. He's hard to avoid if you're in melee.
Yeah. He
funny.
Is wild. You really have to have that dodge time.
If you haven't seen the videos of what Radon looks like while he's actually doing his attacks that zoom in on the horse, you've got to look them up because they're incredible.
He didn't always used to be that size. He learned gravity magic so he could stay on his horse as he grew enormously large from Scarlet Rot.
Yep. That is his actual lore. Is he learned gravity magic specifically so he wouldn't hurt his horse as he got absolutely yoked.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm super curious what you're going to think of Dragon's Dogma, Alex, because I think it fills that same exploration. I
definitely need to continue playing Dragon's Dogma, because I still have like the character that I started.
I don't know the Dragon's Dogma 1 because Dragon's Dogma 1.
I know there's the little bit with Did we talk about how fast travel is going to be handled? Do we know how that's going to be handled in 2 compared to 1?
So 2 has same philosophy as 1 of actual fast travel is limited, but there are multiple methods of getting to places, and it's meant to be a choice of like how risky versus fast do I want these methods to be. Of like, if I'm actively seeking out other encounters, just walk and like go explore while you're moving towards it. If you want to just travel there, you can take a cart that'll take you there. But the cart has a chance of getting attacked on the road, so you have to defend it if that happens. I know there's the wake like port crystals that existed in the first game still exist, but they're more rare.
You're Aether, right?
Yeah, but they're not like free to use Aetheryte. You have to use a single use item every time you use them. So I don't know if we'll get the equivalent of the first game has an eternal fairy stone that
I feel like
but
it always sounds off-putting when we talk about it, but I feel like I'm a fan of how Morrowind handles fast travel and that kind of stuff. So I feel like I'll
this seems
get
similar.
the hang of it easily enough. Yeah.
Though I think the big thing is going to be striking the right balance, because a lot of the reason that fast travel becomes a thing is it just at a certain point you hit the point of like, okay, I've seen this before and I just want to go do the thing that I'm trying to do instead of getting distracted every 5 steps. So I hope they have hit a good balance, because I love it when games run in the way of like, I'm not going to do fast travel, I'm going to do something interesting. But I think most games have had trouble with actually hitting that. So I'm excited to see how they handle it here.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts that you wanted to talk about, Alex?
For Dragon's Dogma, no, I think we took from what we talked about with Dragon's Dogma with, I think, other podcast episodes. I think you talked about how excited I was for the new classes and the
yeah. Do you know your starting vocation?
Blower.
What's your start?
I'm probably gonna go magic.
Magic, good choice. Good choice.
Now that you've told me about all like the really cool ice spells and stuff like that,
I'm gonna have to show you a video of that spell once we're done, so you can see what you're getting in for.
I'm so excited.
Man, it's awesome.
Depending on what happens, I might have to switch to a melee class or something with a little less pizzazz. My computer's been heating up a lot more recently.
Hey, PS5. You have a PS5 now.
Oh yeah, it's true.
I'm probably gonna get the game on PS5, to be honest.
I will say they have.
Oh, that way
there is a sketchy thing with
too.
PS5 and other consoles, Xbox and whatnot, and that Capcom has said it's launching with an uncapped frame rate on PS5, which nobody really knows what that means. I think the hope is that it means it stays at a solid 30 and then goes up to like 60 occasionally. But it may not be a 60 FPS thing.
Listen,
which is why I'm leaning on PC, because I want my ability to lock frame rates and whatnot.
But I have been trained like Pavlov's dog. Whenever I hear the words uncapped frame rate on console, that's a sneaky way of saying 30 frames.
30 frames that hover down to 20.
Fool me. You're not gonna fool
me. As long as it doesn't make me motion sick, it's fine.
Yeah. No, for sure. That is definitely the bigger issue, but it'll probably be, if it's making your computer heat up, it'll probably be more consistent on PS5, I'd say.
But I'm excited for both that and Rise of the Rona, if possible. Like now you said that I would prefer physical versions of them, so I can have that nice case and disc in hand.
Yeah. Rise of the Ronin is going to be a wait for me, unfortunately, although I love everything that company puts out. Dragon's Dogma was too important.
There's just so much.
I'm in the state of the day it launches is the day I have family coming to visit, so I will not be able to play it on launch day and likely launch week. So I'm going to be very behind.
Hey, that's is there cross play or cross platform stuff going on with? Well, it's
not multiplayer.
Yeah, you
can share
pawns, the pawn sharing.
So you can have your AI pawn that you make, you share away, and other players can use them, and they'll learn things about the world from other players taking them on adventures.
Oh, neat!
Super cool system. Yeah, I'm excited to see how it functions in the second game compared to the first. All right, that's the Dragon's Dogma 2 chat. I think we rounded back up on it, but that's I think everything about Dragon's Dogma 2. Which means I'm going to go on a tirade now about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because it's basically all I've been playing. And I have you two captive. So...
Get me out!
And Wyatt, I do need... I need to make a slight apology to you, because I remember we talked about 7 Rebirth, and I was like, 7 Rebirth... And I want to note, I had only played the first 3 chapters at the point we were talking about this. 7 Rebirth, I was like, has less of the tonal thing than
has less timeline gobbledygook, is what you said. That is what you said to me.
That's one half of what I was talking about. That's not the half I'm mentioning right now.
Okay.
So timeline gobbledygook. That's one side of the coin, which I'll stand by that. I think Rebirth it is far less intrusive. It's still present, but it's much less in your face.
That is fine as long as you can understand why it would frustrate someone like me.
No, I get it. I get it. Truly.
Okay. Then it's fine.
They also do more explanation about the Whisper stuff, like post Whispers existing.
Excuse me, it's pronounced gobbledygook.
Yeah, they do more gobbledygook about them, but it makes it make a little bit more sense. They're a little bit more explicit.
I would also
about
accept nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm being mean. I'm sorry.
The great thing about the Whispers is the way they actually explain it in this, and this is a minor spoiler for 7 Remake. I'm not going to say what actually this involves, but the Whispers, whenever they touch a character, they like take away memories or something. That's the idea. They like take away the drive to do something. Again, it's gobbledygook, but they expressly say it this time. So you're like, okay, that's what was happening. So that's why all the Whispers assaulted Aerith in the first game and like ran past her head and took away her memories or whatever. And it doesn't matter. It truly does not matter. They just
except for when they focus nothing on it and they don't explain anything, and then you're left wondering what the fuck.
And then you're really confused. I'm here to tell you that they did explain it, and it does make sense now. It's still silly.
That's okay.
So that part's fine. The part that I am expressly apologizing about is I had told you too that it had less of the like tonal whiplash thing, and I'll still say it has less aggressive tonal whiplash. There's never a point where I've been like whiplashed between the Sector 7 like plate thing and then super funky funny thing immediately, but there very much has been. There's a point in the game where. And I love this, and I'll specify that all of this is optional for the most part. Of what I'm about to describe.
Oh my god!
I unlocked about 8 mini games in the span of one chapter, and all of them have their own crazy stories. And
to be clear too, what we're talking about is something that I think bothers me specifically, and not most people that are excited to play Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, if you like mini games, you already had a home in the Like a Dragon Yakuza franchise. Now you also have a home in the Final Fantasy VII remake.
This is your second home that you go to during holidays.
Yeah, you're Like a Dragon. Well, I don't know. Your Like a Dragon home is now your vacation house.
They are approaching the number of mini games in 7 Rebirth that Like a Dragon traditionally has. I don't think they have quite as many, but some of them are a lot more involved.
I'd like to think that they fully developed Rebirth alongside Remake, and then they cut off Rebirth just to work on the mini games, and so we've been waiting like 4 or 5 years for the mini games.
At this point fully possible. I have hit the point that I'm like, this is so much shenaniganry, and I'm loving it. I'm loving every second of it. It's fantastic. The Honeybee Inn minigame makes a return in a very different context that's very fun. And also a little bit easier, I would say. It's not quite as harsh as it was in the first one. That's great. And then you hit a point where Chocobo Racing comes and in full swing, and you are basically playing Mario Kart, but in Final Fantasy. And it's not a simple mini game. It's a full thing. They really went for it. There are tracks that you race on that are different.
Is the snowboarding mini game in yet?
I don't know. There has not been the mini game that's like a board thing. I don't know what that comes from. There's a mini game that is just like super advanced triple triad called Queen's Blood. And this is in the demo that you can play some in the demo.
Advanced triple triad, you say?
It is advanced triple triad that's incredibly fun. And there are tons of NPCs in every town in the game that play Queen's Blood with you. And then I learned Queen's Blood has like a storyline that's happening, and it actually has like a full side story that's wholly optional. But there's one scene in the game.
Is it getting to the level of The Witcher and Gwent?
I don't understand what Alex, you're saying things right now that I don't know what you're going for. I've not played a Gwent side story.
There's the whole quest pertaining to like get it. There's
you can
acquiring
participate
the
in a
different
Gwent tournament.
Cards of the different decks. Yeah, there's a Gwent tournament, things like that.
Which has
okay.
There's
So
like
Alex,
things with
what
the
I'm
ability to
talking
build
about
the deck.
is you get flashbacks of the creator of Queen's Blood in a very sinister fashion. I haven't finished the game. I don't know where it's going to be, but there is like an overarching plot to Queen's Blood. I don't think Gwent has that.
No.
There is a tournament arc as well, fully optional. You can do. There's a point in the story where you can do a Gwent tournament, and it has maybe the best scene in the game at the end of it. Which, Wyatt, I don't care if you play Queen's Blood at all at any point when you manage to play this game. You have to play that tournament just to see the ending. It's the one mini game that I'll say you need to die on the hill of playing that, because the final scene is maybe the best thing I've ever seen. And then you hit, like, they have the casino section that's Gold Saucer is like a super well-known Final Fantasy thing since 7, so Gold Saucer's there in all its glory, and it's very fun. And yeah, there's just tons of it keeps unveiling new things where I go, this is really cool. This is so much. There's so much game in this game. Did you want to play Rocket League? Because there's Rocket League.
What?
And I'm not going to give you any context for that sentence. It's crazy. There's an amount of stuff in 7 Rebirth, just in the mini games and whatnot, that has blown my mind. Because almost all of it is optional. I think most of them, the story will have you like play them once just so you know they exist, but you never have to play them again. But there is a amount of stuff to do that is just crazy, and very fun. It's also way bigger than I thought it would be. I figured this game would somewhat follow the scale of 7 Remake in being relatively small areas, but just a lot of them. Nope, it's huge. There's just multiple massive regions. So tons to do, tons of cool fights to have. The combat system continues to be, I think, the best combat I've played in basically any game for a long time. And it's got super fun party members.
There's a lot that one can say about Square Enix. They sometimes have projects where the chutzpah is off the charts. they fully commit. Especially in Final Fantasy. It's impressive.
7 Remake system and Rebirth system is wild just because it is like building on the Remake system, but they've added intelligent things that just make it slightly better. Like Cloud now, when you dodge and you do an attack, you have a ranged attack thing that he will do, so you always have a ranged option. They've added like the AoE attacks and are just part of people's base move sets and stuff like that. So that's just much better. But then they have synergy attacks, which are, I think, the coolest thing in the game. If you hold the guard button and then do attacks, any of your face buttons, you have an attack for every partner in your party at that time. So you have, like, if I'm playing Cloud and I have Tifa and Aerith in my party, I have multiple synergy abilities based on that party composition that I can pull by guarding and then using an ability. And it's stuff like, oh, if I'm playing Aerith, I can have Cloud or Tifa jump in front of me and like bodyguard for a little while. So they will do the guard for me, so I don't have to actually dodge. On Cloud, you've got a bunch that are like, I can launch Tifa into the air, and then if I'm playing Tifa, I can like do air combos that otherwise she doesn't have access to. And just super fun stuff like that. Red 13's got some super fun ones of like a defensive stance that he can do, which is great because Red 13 charges a special meter whenever something hits him. So you get this, like, your meter gets charged and your defense is bumped because of that special defense ability, which is super fun. And it gives you a lot of control over what you're doing. But you can build up as you're doing base attacks to these like synergy limit abilities that are basically miniature limit breaks that you do as tag team combos, and they're super cool, great animations that give you like special effects. So it's a super cool layer on top of an already really good system. And it's one of the few, I think the mark of quality is that as I'm playing the game, I am not avoiding fights, which I think is a very typical JRPG thing. If you hit a point where you just want to avoid fights, instead I'm just going straight forward.
I feel like that's a lot more, at least for me, in the actual turn-based JRPG.
Yeah, I think with turn-based it's very common because the fights just take forever. Whereas in Rebirth, I am actively seeking out longer fights all the time because I want them to be longer.
Give me more.
And yeah, it's just fun because the 3 additional party members that I have access to so far are very fun. Because we know 2 of them were explained beforehand, and I think the 3rd one I'm not gonna say just because I don't know that everyone knows about the existence of that character, but it's a character from the original. But we already knew Yuffie and Red 13 are going to be 2 of the playable characters. Yuffie's like the ninja from Wutai who does ninjutsu and uses a big like shuriken to fight with, and she's super fun. Her whole combat flow is like moving in and out of ranged. So she's melee, and then you throw your shuriken and back into range to do magic attacks. And Red 13 is basically, he's a full tank that's super aggressive and like siphons
Which is wild because he looks he looks like a scrawny dog. How
he looks
could
like
he
a
be
scraggly
tank?
boy. He's a scrappy little fighter, and he's very fun to play. I very much enjoy playing Red 13.
What they call a sleeper build.
Yeah. I think Red 13 would be very up your alley, Wyatt, when you're playing it. I think you would very much enjoy it.
I remember Tifa being my favorite from
yeah, Tifa's still great.
I was gonna ask what's the other character that you're not mentioning? Is it the secret character that Brett
Alex, don't spoil the game by accident. I don't know what character you're talking about.
No, there is no way I could possibly spoil the game by accident because this is one that Brett made up that a long time ago.
Oh, are you talking about the one that we gaslit Wyatt into thinking was a real character in Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
That character's not in the game.
And listen, you may have gaslit me to thinking he was a real character, but I gave him the best goddamn lore you've ever seen. So I don't want to hear it.
And I will say for you, Wyatt, you do get an explanation of who the fucking cat is from the last game that shows up randomly in one cutscene.
I want to make it clear. I want to make something perfectly clear. Okay,
I need an explanation for that.
I like 7 Remake. Okay, but it's utter.
Here we go again.
Fucking refusal to explain things to new players hits just the right amount of like for me that it pisses me off. Right. I get that for people who know Final Fantasy and know the story of 7, it's really interesting and cool. All of the like different timeline stuff that they're doing. For a new person, like I said, complete fucking nonsense. I'm like really engaged in the story, and then this fucking animated cat creature that looks like a malformed Disney character comes in out of goddamn nowhere for 2 seconds and then disappears for the rest of the entire game. What was that thing? What is happening?
Wyatt, not only does he disappear, he's just not in the rest of the game. Like, it's not like he disappears and comes back later. He just isn't in the rest of the game.
Dialogue. He just never shows up.
He shows up, slams his fist in the ground, and then you're left feeling extremely confused for
anyone
years.
watching this podcast who's or listening who's a fan of 7, really likes 7 Remake and Rebirth. That's great. I just hope you understand that for a new player, there's so much nonsense going on that just isn't really explained all that well because they're under the expectation that you've played 7 before. I understand that. I don't have that
for you, Wyatt. I know a bit about the 7 plot, and I know probably more than a fair number of people that haven't played it, but I did not know who that character was, aside from their name. They might now be one of my favorite characters. Very cool. But it definitely was like a
mutated Mickey Mouse freak?
All right, well, that's the 7 Rebirth discussion. I think mutated Mickey Mouse freak is a good note to end that on. Look, he's just a good kitty. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Because I've been playing one other game in the fugue state of playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Another thing came out, specifically a demo for it that was super generous. It let you play 8 hours of the actual game. For the demo, which was very cool. Unicorn Overlord is out too. It launched at the end of the week. It was like on the 8th or something. But the demo had been out for a week or two beforehand, and you could play a ton of it. So I played a fair bit of that in between, and it's really good. It's a super weird tactical. I think it's inspired by the Ogre Battle series, which is a series that just hasn't made it. Hasn't had an entry in any modern system, but it's really cool because it's essentially a strategy JRPG that's in real time as you're playing through it, but then you go into like Fire Emblem cutaway battles when your units collide.
Oh
and you can like customize your unit, and it's basically got a version of Final Fantasy XII's Gambit system, where you can condition what your units are going to do, or it'll be like, I want this unit in this formation when the fight starts to do one of these things based on like, if one of my allies is low health, heal them. If an enemy targets me, block, and stuff like that. That's a very cool, like, tweakable system, because once you're in combat, you don't control your party at all. They all just operate based on whatever you've told them to do. And there's tons of ways to like customize it and whatnot. And you can have units of up to 6 characters, ranging from 2 to 6, based on how many you want to have there. And they can do super interesting things because you can mix and match all of your characters. So you might have like a tank in the front line and then an archer in the back. And then be able to customize them to do different things. Or what I've been doing is I have my main character and then 2 horse riding knights that make my speed incredibly fast if I make them the leader of the party, so I can just get anywhere on the map instantly, which is very fun. It's just a very cool system. It's a really unique combat system that the way the stages work is every time you start a battle, you have a minute and a half of real time. At least so far, there might be stages later on that have more. And that time only ticks down when units are actually moving. So you have plenty of like pause time to review your stuff and like set up your units correctly. And it's just very interesting. It plays in a way that's just very hard to describe. I'd almost say the most similar thing is Diofield Chronicles of recent stuff. It was that weird real-time tactics game that Square Enix put out last year, I think, that was not received super well to my knowledge. It was inspired by like tabletop battles and stuff. But yeah, the other big gimmick with it, outside of the combat being really good, and it's also just gorgeous. Unicorn Overlord is very, very pretty to look at. Is the story's very, I don't want to say non-linear, I'm not sure that's the right term here, but it's, the context is you're like trying to liberate the continent. So you're playing the Liberation Army, and you have to choose like what areas to go support at what times, and then you have to defend things from the other army, and you're basically going around and playing these battle stages to unlock new characters. But then you get a ton of options of like, I just did a stage where I was fighting against a group of bandits, and then when I won, the bandit leader was like, well, you could either lock me up and kill me, or I could join you. And then if you set him free, he ends up joining you, which is very fun. So yeah, some really cool choice-based stuff like that. Or I could have executed him. I think it's a very cool set of options, especially for a game that I think is designed to be played multiple times. And Wyatt, it does have romance.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but is the romance an interesting mesh of turn-based and real-time action?
I have no idea. I haven't hit it yet, but I do know whenever my units are in a unit together, little hearts pop up on the side whenever they do something.
But Ryan, if Midnight Suns has taught us anything, a heart does not necessarily mean romance.
Well, I do know this explicitly does have romance, but I don't know if it's with anyone or what. I'm sure there's set characters or something that can do it. But your party does have basically Fire Emblem relationships with each other, and then we'll have conversations when you hit to certain relationship levels and whatnot. And some of them can lead to romance.
Like you said, very Fire Emblem.
Yeah, very Fire Emblem, but the game does not play like Fire Emblem, basically, at all.
Okay.
Though I do think if you're into Fire Emblem, you will almost definitely be into this as well.
I've played one Fire Emblem game. I played Awakening way back in the day. I really liked it until I played this really bullshit mission where you have to protect this like one person in a circle, and it was really fucking stupid, and I hated it, and it made me stop playing the whole game.
Yeah, I'll say none of it. I have not hit a point where the games really made me go, like, feel like I was outclassed at a certain point.
It made me go, okay.
Yeah, nothing has made me act like that yet. And I might hit. I'm not sure if I'll hit that at some point. I think right now, it seems like battles are never going to get too complex, because I think you can only have a maximum of 8 units, like maybe 8 or 10 at a time. So you're never keeping track of too much stuff at once. Your individual units can be pretty complicated because they can have up to 6 people inside of them that you can tune individually for each unit member, but you don't have to do any of that. Like, that's all optimizing that you can do. And the sort of biggest strategy thing I found with it is it's mostly about just like looking at what the enemy is, and the game will tell you what the majority of enemy combatants are when you're going into a stage. So you're informed about the decisions you're making, and you can be like, okay, they have a lot of evasion people. I'm going to bring archers because the archers have a thing that lets them automatically hit. So that's an option. And it can also be very much a case of like, when I'm moving about, Fire Emblem has the weapons triangle. This doesn't have that, but it does sort of have that same type of mechanism where if I see an archer and I'm playing a unit that has a rogue in it, I know the archer can hit the rogue regardless of the rogue's ability to evade. So I need to be like, I'm not going to let the rogue get close, which then plays into the fact that if you have two units moving next to each other and one of them gets attacked, you can swap which one is doing the fighting. So like if I could use one unit to bait another unit into range of something else.
Oh, that's
fun. Archers
fun.
can use assist attacks, so if a unit is in range of an archer on your side and when it attacks, you can have the archers assist and do like a special attack with them, which then ties into all of your units have stamina, so they can only be used X amount of times before they need to rest. And when they're resting, they're vulnerable for like a 10-20 seconds of real time. So you have to protect them with other units and just make sure they can't be surprise attacked because they can't defend themselves when they're doing that.
Jesus Christ.
It's really interesting. But it sounds like a lot, but it ends up feeling really simple and approachable because of how quick the game moves. Like it's never, because you can pause whenever you want, you always have time to think out these decisions. And I've never hit a point now where it's been too hard to figure out what I should do in a certain situation, but I also have felt like I have a lot of expression of like, I'm sure the party I'm running with is very different from anyone else running this, because it felt like there were tons of viable options. Of like my main person right now is running with a thief as the frontliner, because thieves are actually evasion tanks in this game, where their whole deal is they have.
I love that term, evasion.
Just
tank.
don't get
I
hit.
love evasion tanks because they have their passive abilities are, and you can trigger these passive abilities are things that you trigger in their like system of commands. Their passive ability is to, if an attack would hit them, they can just go nope. So they basically will take no damage from the majority of fights unless there's an archer, because an archer can hit them regardless of that ability. So you've got this really interesting sort of interplay of different things going on, which it's been super satisfying so far. I probably won't play a ton of it until after I finish Rebirth, but so far it's been very good. So I think it's impressive, especially because it's a game genre that I think just doesn't really exist anymore in broad strokes of like that JRPG tactics game, specifically like conquering game. I think the only other game I've played like it is Brigandine, which is much less story focused, I would say, than this is. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that game goes. Anything else that people have been playing they want to mention?
There was another thing. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go for it.
When I was still downloading the Game Pass games for this month, I saw, that's an interesting new featured game. I've heard about that before. Indivisible. I started playing. That's been really fun. It has I'd almost describe it as rhythm action turn based, the way that you pull off combos in it.
Yeah.
It's
description.
You have 4 players on the board essentially in like the diamond shape, and you control them with W, A, S, and D, and then the arrow keys being so pressing W would be your character in the top there. That would be just their normal attack. You can at where I am right now, you can chain that up to 3 times, and they have stamina to where that recharges over a period of time based on their speed. I just went right into the mechanics. It's a fun 2D side scroller game with that sort of rhythm action turn based combat for its encounters. Very pretty art style.
Yeah, Indivisible is gorgeous to look at.
I did hit a snag on the current boss that I was at, so I need to experiment with There's also so many different allies that you can collect with different movesets and abilities that you can mix and match together for interesting combos. I think there's 20 different people that you can have for your party of 4.
I'm still playing Helldivers from time to time. I think the amount of bugs that are in the game have kind of it. It's still a good game, but my enthusiasm for it has definitely started to
I
wane.
wanted to bring up Helldivers too because I've been feeling the same way of like I really, really have enjoyed Helldivers. I think I'll continue to enjoy it, but
It's a great game,
there's a bunch of
but
issues that I think
but
were hard to notice at first, but now that we're further along and like harder stuff is being thrown at the player base, I think those issues are starting to show a little bit more.
I think and one thing that's I don't know how I feel about is whenever I talk about like the technical state of the game with people, right? Or whenever I'm, seeing it talked about online somewhere. The defense is always made of, oh, well, it's a smaller studio, no. I don't I don't know how I feel about that being your like trump card of like this game is allowed to come out buggy because small studio. Like there's a limit to that. If and my limit is if it's like funny visual bugs or just general goofy shit, that's one thing. I feel like 70 to 80% of the bugs I get in this game are games where you cannot or are bugs where you cannot finish a mission, which is
That's bad.
Yeah.
infuriating because there are so many things that you're collecting in a mission. Because you're not just getting like XP, right? You're also getting samples, which comes in 3 different varieties that are all needed to unlock things. You're also getting potentially super credits, which is kind of like the premium currency of the game. You're also getting what are they called? Rec slips, or no, medals. Rec slips is like your general currency. There's also your medals, which unlock various things in the different battle passes and stuff. So there's a lot that's riding on your progression from mission to mission. And if you can't finish your mission a lot of the time because the game is bugging out, it it gets so infuriating. And that's the main reason that it's my enthusiasm is dying because it's all missions that really halt your progress in a really unsatisfying way.
Yeah. It's also been, I
Uh,
think, the balancing has shown some weak points too now. Of there was just a patch that nerfed a few things, and I want to be very clear that I think these nerfs were not nearly as big of a deal as people were making them out to be. They were probably very good for the game in the long run. Of
it's more just making more builds and certain items more viable, which I think is a good thing,
yeah,
to be
but
honest.
the problem that has risen from that is that they didn't bring a lot of other stuff up to that level, which means there's still only really so many viable things to do, especially because the game has kind of hit a point where it's so hard at the higher difficulties that you just, if you run into any of the problems, you just can't finish a mission, like what I was saying, which is a huge problem. Of it's like there was a line that was like, use your stratagems, like they're how you win, but I'm like, I can't use my stratagems because they're all on cooldown or have doubled cooldowns or whatnot as I'm doing these higher level missions. Like there's reasons that this stuff is really hard. And they were like, well, your main weapons aren't meant to be your main use of damage, it should be your stratagems. I'm like, I'm out of stratagems. Like they get used, everyone in our party is using everything, and it's not enough
You
to
have
solve
4
every
stratagem
situation.
slots. All of them have cooldowns, and there's no clear strategy of like use this one here, use this one here. It's all incredibly situational.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I think
never
if we were playing
know.
in a full squad of 4 that was pre-made, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But when you're playing
Yeah,
with randoms that have a random loadout, like you can't create your loadout together and have a cohesive thing. So it means you're always going to be running with just whatever everyone's running, which means you tend to lean towards loadouts that can handle more things that are more versatile. But that means you aren't taking the heavy hitting stuff that you might need for certain situations. So it's just hard to balance that. I think it's just a
and it's
weird
also
situation.
it's also frustrating because it feels like every time they introduce a patch that's meant to fix certain things, it feels like more issues crop up. Perfect example, they just added mechs to the game. Their most recent update, if we all liberate a certain
Yeah.
planet, you get mechs as a stratagem.
Ooh.
And they're awesome. They feel a lot like the Mantis from Halo 4 and Halo 5. They're so much fun. Slight little problem. There is a very real possibility that if you shoot the missile, it'll just blow up your entire mech. Not intended as
what's
part of the
happening
game.
Is that as you turn, if you shoot the missile while turning even a little bit, it clips into the barrel and explodes. Which is terrible.
Why?
Clips into the barrel.
It is such an obvious, like it was an issue that was discovered very early on. You guys have had time since launch to find and fix these issues. If this was an issue, then don't release it. It's so frustrating for a game that you like and care about to come out, and it just keeps introducing new issues with every update. It's infuriating. There were updates where there were patches for a bug where you would get caught in the like cryo tubes and you wouldn't be able to actually walk into the ship and do anything. I didn't get that bug until after the patch that was supposed to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, it was also there was straight up 2 weeks where I could not play the game because of the servers. Like literally, I would try to log in and just would not be able to. And that's the kind of bug where you just can't. Like, what am I supposed to do? Sit around and refresh the page eternally? Because I'm not going to do that. Like that's
a huge waste of time. To be fair with servers, I'm willing to be, especially in the first few weeks, I was willing to be a little bit more lenient because they got way more players than they were expecting. Mm-hmm. So I can forgive that.
They got like actively worse over time.
Then I realized something, and and a lot of us realized that part of the reason that there were server issues is because they had no function to kick idle players. In your multiplayer only game, there was no function that automatically boots idle players, which is, to me, mind-blowing. I feel like that is like something that just needs to be there for especially online only games. Also, up until very recently, armor stats meant absolutely nothing. Everything was set on the lowest, on like the light armor stat, which means everyone was getting one shot no matter like what your armor level is. And it was like that for way, way too long. I think there's a certain point where we just have to accept that it's a really buggy game that shouldn't have come out when it did, and not just rely on, it's a small team. After a while, that doesn't really make up for it.
Yeah, it's also a lot of the reason people didn't know is stuff like the armor bug is hard to figure out if you're just playing the game, because it's, how are you going to notice expressly without a training dummy or something to like, or a thing that you can just shoot yourself with that does a certain amount of damage, how effective your armor is. And then someone eventually figured out like they did that and were like, how many hits from the small thing does it take to kill me? And they were like, the hits were different depending on, or were not different when they should have been different for each armor type. So
yeah, I don't know. I kind of, I usually like to look at the positives in most things, and I try and be as positive as I can with like discourse on things, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like the technical state of this game is not being talked about enough. And that's because people are having fun, and that's fine. But I also think it just needs to be talked about more, because I don't want to let them off the hook. Because it's in such a state that I think is much poorer than maybe we are letting on. And it's a little frustrating because I just don't want games to keep coming out like this, but it feels like every now and then,
it's so fun. I think it stands out more with Helldivers when you run into these issues, because you're having so much fun and then your fun is just ruined in a moment by things like this happening. And I wonder if a lot of it is just the sample grind, because I think samples are so much harder to get than any of the other resources you need, that that's because you lose them when you die, or they drop on the ground when you die and someone has to go pick them up. But if you hit one of those bugs, or just a bad spawn where like 8 chargers spawn on you and then a bunch of bile things all at once and you just have no ability to deal with them, it becomes a situation where it just feels way less rewarding to play the game. Which, I think it's a little demoralizing.
So all right. It's definitely frustrating. Still a fun game. Needs to be fixed immediately.
Well, on that happy Helldivers note, it's time for shoutouts. We've hit our time. So, anyone ready to go with a shoutout?
I got one. I'll
Go
go.
for it.
Mr. Ryan, I'd like to go, please. So yeah, getting back into No Man's Sky, found an interesting statistic. As of 2 years ago, even with all of the active players playing this game's been out for 7, almost 8 years. There are so many planets in the game that, as of 2 years ago, we have only discovered about 2% of all the planets in the entire game.
Oh,
which
no.
is nuts.
Perfect.
That is insanity.
I can't wait for the Light No Fire stats to come around.
Oh, God. Please let it be smaller. Please let it be a smaller game.
Just be good. Just be a good game. Please, for the love of God. Just one little thing.
I'm going to give a special little shout out to a little game that Wyatt and I played not too long ago called Foam Stars.
Oh.
I want to mention Foam Stars, and I want to be clear that we didn't have a bad time. I think we had an okay time playing Foam Stars. It felt, I would say, significantly different enough than Splatoon, but...
With the exception that it was visually overwhelming.
Yeah, that's what I was about to get to. I think the way you described it, Wyatt, was it felt like you were both high and on a sugar rush at the same time.
Oh.
And it was like...
Yep.
It reminded me a lot of the feeling of playing the finals, but in like a way that wasn't as fun. Of the finals gives you like this almost heart palpitation feeling after you play a round of the finals, in a good way. It's like it's very high intensity, high energy, and very fun. Foam Stars gave you that after like 5 minutes, and it became a situation of, it's not that like I understand what was happening and was so into the match, it's that so much was going on at every individual second that I just feel like I feel like a chihuahua panting, right? Like, I need to catch my breath after that.
It is worth pointing out the gameplay itself can be fun. The voice lines for all of the characters that you pick, terrible.
Except
god awful
for the barista door. The barista
door
was good.
And listen, maybe there's a bit of bias, but the barista door was pretty freaking cool.
Now, are you talking about the delivery or like the lines themselves?
The writing. Absolutely the writing.
Right.
Yeah. Although I will say, when you do special abilities, he makes latte art. He makes foam art and all of the foam that's being shot around,
which is very cute. It's a very cool ability. All right, Alex, bring us home.
You know, I had
all this time.
I really did. I had one at first. I've completely forgotten it.
Panic, scramble!
Find anything in the room.
Actually, I haven't shouted this out this before. I think a drink called an autumn fog. It's like a London fog, but it's much more like either cinnamony or pumpkin spicy.
Is it still like is it still a black tea? Like
it can be.
Okay.
I've seen it with like black teas, with Earl Grey, with chai. I primarily use cinnamon tea for mine.
Gotcha.
Because like I've had when I don't make like any type of black tea, it ends up way too incredibly acidic for me to be able to handle.
That's
like I have to dip the bag in for like a minute tops before it gets overwhelming.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it for us. As always, Tuesdays, podcast goes live. Catch us on the next week for our Game Pass Games Club for the next round of games, because after that we're all going to be playing Dragon's Dogma probably. So
Oh, you know it. What character should I make for Dragon's Dogma first?
No Man's Sky is on Game Pass. I could just make you guys play with me. I might do that.